This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. The Browns have been back in the building for a couple of weeks here, so you know who we have to tap in with. Daniel Oyefusi of ESPN. Daniel, how's it been to be back in Berea early this year? Because the Browns hired a new coach. They had y'all back in there right after the owners meeting. I was like, damn, they ain't wasting no time.
Yes, no such thing as an off season. Like I was surprised because I didn't even know they had an extra voluntary veteran mini camp before the draft. So when I was looking at the schedule, I was like, "Oh, we got to come back to Berea and cover some football." So it's been fun. I was just telling you before, man. Like I don't like just sitting around and not doing much, being idle. So it's fun to be out there, even with rookie mini camp over the past weekend.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of noise here in Cleveland about this quarterback competition. I think it's funny to me how we're at this point to where people have some people have declared that they need to just go with somebody as the starter. It is May 13th. I can't imagine there has been enough work done on either of these quarterbacks from Todd's perspective or that coaching staff's perspective to be confident about any kind of evaluation of a quarterback yet. Where do you feel like they're starting off with? Do you think it's truly no favorites? We're just going to start with a blank slate and just go from there? Or do you think they're coming into this, kind of hoping one outcome over the other, but going to leave the door open for something else to happen?
Well, I do think that both of these quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders are on equal footing, I would say, in terms of the way that Tom Munkin is looking at them. I think, like the GM has said, the ownership has said that Todd Munkin is making the decision. And he really has spoken as much about like the fact that Deshaun's getting a fresh start, clean slate. And, he's open up to what Shedeur can bring as a young player as well. I do think it is probably a little bit too early to be saying like one guy should definitively be the starter after three voluntary veteran mini camps. They've been on the field now for the start of the phase 2 program and stuff like that, and been throwing the ball around. But I will say like they've been all together for well over a month now, and they've been definitely well over a month. And it's not just the on-field work that they're looking at. Like these guys have been in meetings. They've been talking to not only Tom Munkin but the offensive coordinator Travis Schweitzer and the quarterbacks coach and the staff going through the playbook and having a lot of talks. So like it's not just the on-field work that is playing a role into the quarterback decision. Like these guys are getting evaluated every single day, on their recall and their memorization of the playbook and their understanding of the concepts and everything. So I do think we should still let it play out. Tom Munkin has said that he wants to go. He would hopefully like to enter training camp knowing who the starter is. I think that that's even a little too soon. I think that we should look at both of these guys in the preseason, especially Deshaun having not played in almost 2 calendar years. But the evaluation isn't limited to on-field work and how they look throwing the ball. Like a lot of it is, like how you're understanding the playbook and keeping up with that.
How do you think Todd's approach to this quarterback competition has separated itself from what we saw with Kevin last year?
Well, that's a really good question because I've seen a lot of the talk that Munkin has been a little bit more direct in explaining how the competition is going to play out. And I actually went back to like look at the exact transcripts and the quotes of what Kevin said. And I'm not gonna lie, Kevin wasn't too his comments actually weren't too dissimilar from Tom Munkin. Like if you go back to the time when they traded up to select Shador in the fifth round, Munkin, or no, excuse me, Stefanski and Andrew Berry were asked about the competition, and I remember like the verbatim quote from Berry was, "Everyone added to the room is expected to compete," and Stefanski actually said like the reps are not going to be equal. He said the reps may not be 25, 25, 25, 25 between all four quarterbacks, but he said we're going to do what we think is fair to the team and what's fair to the player. So like I hear a lot of talk that that Stefanski said it was going to be an open competition. He never really did say that. He said that everyone is expected to compete. Now, I think that the framing and the way that he spoke about the quarterback situation could have been a lot better. I think that if they had kind of gone about it the way that they talked about maybe Taylor Green. The way AB talked about Taylor Green's hand, this is a guy that needs some polish for this game. If they had said that about Shador, like, hey, we think he's talented, he's definitely more talented than a fifth round pick, but we do want to work on some things with his game. I think that people may have had tempered expectations about the quarterback competition entering in because it was very clear. And I always say, like, as a member of the media, I think that we could always do better in the way that we speak about these topics and the framing of these topics. I think we could have done a little bit better because it was very clear early on that Shador wasn't in their plans to compete to start week one. But the prevailing notion was that this was a quote unquote wide open competition. And, everyone was going to get a clear and equal shot when that wasn't the plan. Like they thought that, the two vets, Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, were, definitely in a position to pick up the playbook quick. And they thought that Dylan taking them in the third round had the potential to start sooner than later.
PrizePicks is a fun way to earn cash while you watch your favorite teams. No complex betting rules, just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Here are my picks for this upcoming season, AFC North edition. Jimmy Bernard, I have less than 475. This has to do with volume available in Pittsburgh's offense. Quincy Judkins, I have over 975. Browns improved line. I think the run game's going to be better with it. Chase Brown, under 900 yards. Joe Burrow equals less rushing yards usually for the Bengals offense. Mark Andrews, more than 475 yards. Lamar's going to need a safety blanket. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You could follow me on the app at Quinn_C to see all my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineup to download the app using the link in the description. Yeah, I think what hurt Kevin when it came to that perception are two things. One, the selection of Dylan Gabriel, and whether it's true or not, the widespread perception that was Kevin's guy in that room. And two, it was kind of a tone argument with Kevin Stefanski, I feel like, a lot of the times, where it's like how he said it versus what he's saying, because I used to make the point all the time last year. I'm like, I don't know why people thought that this was going to be split evenly. We've never seen a quarterback competition split evenly with reps 4 ways ever in the NFL. There's always going to be.
And I had said it too, real quick. I had said it too. Like I wrote entering training camp that he faces an uphill battle just off the strength of, like, by the time we got through the offseason workout program and Shador hadn't taken a single first team rep and all the other three quarterbacks, like we kind of knew where this was headed. But there was that belief that, everyone was going to get a shot at bat, so to speak, and that just wasn't in the plans for that coaching staff.
Yeah, it's I think it's timing. It's also just kind of Todd. I don't know how to describe it, but he's
direct. He's blunt. He's straightforward.
He's a more
kind of registers a little bit more.
Yeah, he just he says some of the same stuff that Kevin says. It's just he just says it in a more engaging way that just doesn't make you feel like, oh, he's just not trying to give me an answer. I don't know. He's just better at that kind of stuff than I think Kevin was.
The communication and the delivery is definitely a lot more straightforward and clear. And, you see that with, a lot of fans kind of appreciate that approach, even though, again, I think he said a lot of the same things, but just the way that he's kind of more direct about it. When we got to the first day of training camp and we saw Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco split the reps, we asked about Shador. Obviously we're asking about Shador every day. And Kevin's saying, the reps can change. They can change from day to day. They will change from day to day. Okay, then we're kind of assuming that at some point Shador is going to look, get a look, and especially because I thought he looked, pretty solid in training camp as well. You just kept on thinking like, hey, like at some point he's going to get an opportunity. I think that the messaging probably could have been a lot clearer and better early on. To kind of temper expectations about the overall competition.
Do you think this quarterback competition, whoever wins it, do you think there's a strong chance that they keep the job for the season, or do you think this is just merely kind of determining the order in which we see these quarterbacks, kind of like last year, where it's like, Joe Flacco won, but he's first up, and then we'll get to see Dylan, we'll get to see Shador, we even got to see Bailey Zapp at some point, or whoever it was, the fourth quarterback they threw out there. Do you think this is more of that situation this year, or do you think that there's like a legitimate chance here that the Browns are going to give whoever wins this competition more of a leash than maybe I'm assuming?
Well, I think that actually both, regardless of who starts first, I think both quarterbacks are going to get a pretty significant leash. And I would say for multiple reasons. I think one, you look at this just overall being a new offensive scheme with potentially five new offensive linemen, a bevy of new wide receivers, Todd Monken calling the plays. Like you got to give that offense time to bake with whoever's under center. And then
Hmm.
you look at depending on which individual quarterback is starting the season first, and there's going to be reason to let kind of ride out. Like if you're starting with Deshaun and he looks a little rusty as he has coming off, these layoffs, whether it's suspension or injury, you want to give him some time to kind of heat up a little bit and get accustomed to playing and getting those live reps. On the same level, if it's Shador, I mean, that's a second year quarterback that's only made, what is it, 7 starts. I mean, you're not going to pull him after 2, 3 games if he's not looking good. So I think that regardless of who starts, I think there is going to be a little bit of time to let those guys acclimate to a new scheme, new teammates, a new play caller, and it only kind of adds to the angst maybe depending on which side you're kind of pulling for. Like, hey, like you just naturally you expect the Browns to go through multiple quarterbacks in the season, usually because whether it's injury or performance. But I think that if either quarterback stays healthy under center, there is reason to believe and really good reason to want both of those guys to kind of get some time to gradually work up a rhythm.
Mm. Do you think that because of I mean, the Browns have a lot of turnover going in that offense, right? Six new offensive linemen. Effectively, even if they bring back Luke Whippler to start at center, it's five new starters on the offensive
Yeah,
line.
week one starters. Yeah.
Yeah, five new starters on that line. None of those guys individually have any time playing with any of those other guys. So it's not just five new guys, it's five new guys that are new to each other in a new offense, with some new wide receivers. Do you think the amount of, how do I put this, moving pieces that they're trying to put together over the next couple of months, do you think that's going to affect the decision when it comes to quarterback? And they might say to themselves, hey, we don't want to deal with a lot of inexperience at quarterback if we don't have to, given that we're going to have to do all of these other new pieces here, and install them. So maybe do you think that incentivizes them to go with somebody like Watson if he looks playable? And from what you've seen of Watson, does he look playable? Because last time we saw him out there in 2024, he was not at a playable state.
Well, to answer the first question, I do think that, there's a lot of nuances that go into, playing quarterback and ultimately I think this quarterback decision. And I think that is one of them. The mental side of it, being able to make the checks and get things situated at the line of scrimmage. That I think over the course of Shador's 7 starts, he got more comfortable with that. So I mean, I remember a play where he adjusted Isaiah Bond's route mid motion and made a big play out of it. But again, that mental side of it, controlling the line of scrimmage, making checks, getting the offense into the right play, that all goes into playing the quarterback position, and I think that that is something that will be a factor in the quarterback the quarterback decision for sure.
All right. And then as far as Deshaun Watson goes, from what you've seen since you've been here in Cleveland, do you think that he's actually because you're hearing a lot of hype about how much back he is physically. Do you see
Yeah.
that when you watch him out there, kind of limited in the, I don't know what they call it, the pre OTAs?
Yeah, voluntary veteran minicamp. Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of a different view than a lot of people that have kind of watched him at these practices. He looks healthy. Like
Hmm.
he looks like a guy who isn't playing on a torn Achilles. Like that's kind of like the baseline. Like he looks healthy. He's out there. He's moving around. He doesn't look hampered or inhibited in any way, shape, or form. But I joined the speed in 2024, and I watched him that training camp when he was coming back from the shoulder surgery. And frankly, I wasn't like overall impressed with him or the offense. Like it was a very dink and dunk offense. I didn't see a lot of aggressiveness pushing the ball down the field. And it's kind of one of those things where like I had just joined the beat and I'm just like really putting my eyes on him in the offense for the first time. So I didn't want to like speak declaratively. Maybe this is just like his play style or whatever. But then we saw it, in joint practices with the Vikings where they really struggled. He didn't play in the preseason, and then we saw a lot of the stuff that was in training camp. I saw it carry over into the actual games, starting with the Cowboys where he really struggled. So for me, like the bar really isn't practice. Like practice is always somewhat doctored. Like he's
Hmm.
not really getting rushed. He's not really getting hit. That's different. I think he'll look fine in practice, and he might look better than Shador in practice. But when he's been out there on the field when the bullets are live, it's been a completely different game. Or for me, like it's been kind of more of the same. So I'm not really like making a lot of big declarations just off of what I've seen in practice. Keep in mind for the media, it's only been one practice, albeit. So I'm really not holding much weight based off what I'm saying in practice because we've seen what the games have looked like, and they haven't looked good. So that's really how I view it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair place to be at. Final question about this quarterback competition I want to ask you is when it comes to what we've talked about with quarterback, right? They're building a lot around it. They're not going to really ask them to kind of be the hero. It's kind of a game management position this year, right? The run game is really what they're hoping to really build. Do you think when you hear that description, when I hear that description at least, I think, oh, that's what Dylan Gabriel was supposed to be able to do, right? Do you think he's kind of being slept on as a part of this quarterback competition, or do you think this is just kind of a two-man race at this point between Shador and Deshaun?
Yeah, I mean, I know Tom Munkin said it's not a two-man race, and I think that part of that is just not wanting to kind of just like throw
Mm-hmm.
Dylan to the side. Like, hey, you want there to be the idea of an open, like everybody's competing. That's what Munkin has frequently said. There might be a little bit of a depth chart and a rep order, but everyone's competing. But I will say, based off of what we saw at voluntary veteran minicamp, it is a two-man race. We saw Shador and Deshaun split all of the reps. And Dylan, probably took 10% of the reps, and all those reps were with, the backup third stringers. So similar to last year, I can't really go off of what you say. I got to go off what I see and what you do. And until I see any different, my belief is that this quarterback competition is firmly between Shador Sanders and Deshaun Watson.